Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Wrestling Doesn't Make Sense. How apt a title that is, given the subject matter of this podcast this month, this episode, I suppose. So we're only a couple of days removed from the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view that the WWE put on, and got some things to say about that. A couple of things to say about one match in particular that a lot of people were talking about. Well, at least I saw a lot of chatter about it on my social media pages. So I think we probably should talk about it. And I'm going to say that I was super happy to see the Kabuki Warriors win the tag titles. I was so excited. I assume that's the match we're here to talk about, right? It was a great match. Didn't you like it?
It was a great match, yeah. But I don't think it was probably the most noteworthy match on the show.
But Asuka, she used the green mist. I was so... Oh, man. You know what I really liked about that match? Was that, I've seen heel Asuka before. But we get to see, Kairi Sane being a little heel. And she was really good at it.
Yeah, it's a bit odd seeing her as a heel.
Right, exactly. You wouldn't think it would work. But she's so good. She made it work. You hear that? She was so good, she made it work. This is bear that one in mind. Okay, well then let's talk about one of the other noteworthy matches on that show. A Hell in a Cell match, maybe. Hell in a Cell. And I'm not going to swerve you and talk about the first one, although it was a pretty good match.
It was a really good match.
Yeah, but I was a little surprised to see Sasha not win. Because I thought last month what they were going to do was put the belts on Bayley and Sasha at the same time, which would be in contrast to Becky Lynch and Charlotte, those two little teams. I thought that's probably what they're going to do. Boy, did they not at all do that. I mean, Becky still looks great, but you're how much further? What else are they going to do with her,
Yeah, well, I think it's probably because we've got the draft coming up, starting this Friday on SmackDown. So I'm guessing there's going to be a bit of a shake-up of the roster, and hopefully, it'll kind of settle into place, and we won't have so much crossover between Raw and SmackDown anymore as well. So I'm guessing that they've got certain plans in place. It's been rumored for a while that Becky might be going over to SmackDown, in which case you'd expect her to, lose the Raw Women's title before that happens. But like you say, it's a bit of a surprise that she ended up retaining in this match with Sasha.
Yeah, and I'm with the Charlotte Bayley thing as well. I'm really, I feel like Bayley should have won that.
Yeah.
I mean, I love Charlotte Flair, but I feel like that probably would have been... But the thing about those two matches is that, while the end result's a little questionable, it was still good, and it still kind of makes sense. We could, it's not what? Charlotte Flair won the belt? Get out of town. Logical, makes sense.
Yeah.
This is all very subtly building up to the main event of Hell in a Cell, which I mean, I don't even know where to start.
No, nor do I.
I'm so confused. A lot of people going into this were expecting Bray Wyatt to win, right?
Yeah.
And I was expecting him to win, but at the same time, I wouldn't have been surprised if he didn't. Right? If Seth won, I'm well, wouldn't have been my call, but at least that kind of makes sense. Seth Rollins has been a pretty good champ so far. Build him up a little more. If that's the way you want to go, that's fine. But the way they did it was really weird. And again, you can kind of see what they were trying to do with the way they booked the end of that match. They were trying to, make Bray Wyatt look like a real unstoppable monster. And Seth Rollins be kind of frustrated about that and has to, find a way out of the match somehow that doesn't involve pinning him because he can't seem to do it. That's the story they were trying to tell. And I would argue that they went incredibly heavy-handed with that, if I may put it lightly. They doubled down on that. And
big time, yeah.
Dude, it made everything look like shit.
Yeah, essentially.
Like everything. I was blown away when I saw Seth like just hitting curb stomp after curb stomp. He hit like 15.
Yeah.
Like that's not even like an exaggeration. He went to town curb stomping that guy, and it just made him look like an idiot because you're like, that's your finishing move.
Yeah. Well, it was his finishing move. I'm not sure he can use it anymore and convincingly beat anyone.
Well, now Triple H can't use his either because Seth went to the well and dropped the pedigree on Bray Wyatt, and that didn't work either. So he stomped him a bit more, and he threw a lot of crap on him. It got really strange. And there was a bit in it because sometimes you know or you think you know where they're going, and so there's a bit after Rollins had hit like maybe 8 to 10 of his stomps, and he gets frustrated and he goes outside the ring and he gets a chair, and he comes back into the ring and he's standing over the top of Bray Wyatt holding that chair, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is where I was like transfixed because I'm like, what would be super cool if like at that exact moment Bray Wyatt did his little like crab walk.
Yeah.
He like raised himself up to prove that he wasn't like hurt, and that would freak Seth out surely way more than having him just kick out after a bunch of curb stomps, right? I'm like, that's why I was transfixed to the screen, because I'm like, if they do that, that's perfect, because that little crab walk, like the way he lifts himself up, would be everybody would get it. They would be like, it's symbolic. It's the way the Undertaker sits up. Like they know what that means. It means you got to do more to put me down. It's symbolic. It's right there. I'm like, wow. Let's see if they do that. They did not do that. And most of the time, I complain that the WWE don't book the way I specifically like. Which is impossible because they don't understand the way I think. But I'm like, dude, that would have been so obvious. Surely, I am not the only person who thought that was coming. That would have been perfect.
Yeah.
And then you wouldn't have to have done anything else. Because then Seth Rollins is like, uh-oh, what do I do now? I would have had him like try to escape the cage. And just like, it sounds weird to have your champion like running away. It's a very cowardly thing to do. But I thought that's what that match was going to be. It was going to be the old double turn. Because the crowd Because the crowd were really behind Bray Wyatt. So I'm like, this is a double turn. They're going to make Bray Wyatt the face and keep him strong. And have Seth Rollins suddenly be like, I don't want to fight him anymore. I want to run away with my championship. And make him like a slimy heel like he used to be. And just kind of do the flip there. Like, this could work. It could work. It did not work. You know what I mean? Like, I that's what I would have done. And
that would definitely make a ton more sense than what we actually got. Yeah. But I think the big problem with the match itself was like it shouldn't have been booked in the first place. They booked themselves into a corner by having the Fiend's. I think this is still only his second match as the Fiend. And it's for the title in a Hell in a Cell match against the champion who they don't want to lose the title yet. So why did they book this match in the first place? Because if the Fiend lost here, like just got pinned by Rollins or whatever, then he looks no different than Bray Wyatt did, like 2-3 years ago, right, where like all the mystique had been beaten out of him because he just lost and lost and lost all the time. So they couldn't really go that route. They didn't want to have Seth lose the title, but to go with what they went with is just baffling. Mm-hmm. Like if they really wanted to do a non-finish, which I'm gonna just throw out there and say is a stupid idea anyway, because they did a non-finish in last year's Hell in a Cell main event, so that didn't exactly go over well, but at least it sort of made sense because it was a case of Brock Lesnar coming out and killing both Roman Reigns and Braun Strowman, so that was like an obvious no contest. But this time around, it wasn't obvious at all what was going on, and they didn't announce that it was like a referee stoppage or whatever, so the assumption was that, Rollins had been DQ'd in a Hell in a Cell match, which is the most ridiculous thing you can imagine. Like, it not only damages Seth Rollins and The Fiend, but it does it for the Hell in a Cell gimmick as well. This is supposed to be like the gnarliest, brutalist, most bloodthirsty match in all of wrestling, and apparently it can, end just like that.
Right. Like, doesn't Mick Foley really wish the match could have ended like that? He's like, dude, I fell through the fucking cage twice, and they kept it going.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
where was the ref stoppage then?
Exactly. Like, I could have really done with that. My knees, my back really could have done with that fucking stoppage right then, instead of having to keep doing half a match. Like, again, like, it doesn't really make the Hell in a Cell look good.
No.
Because, like you said, the whole point of that gimmick match was that, like, this is the one. This is a big one. It's Hell in a Cell. And they set that up pretty well at the beginning with Mick Foley and stuff. And even with Shawn Michaels and Undertaker, they were like, shit's going to go down in this match. It's a big deal.
Yeah.
And at some point, they've just taken that to mean, like, a lot of chair shots and stuff, like silly violence. Like, it annoys me when which happened in this match, whenever, like, they go to the outside and they start bringing in, like, ladders and stuff. Like, dude, you're in a fucking cage. You don't need a ladder. If Seth Rollins had used that ladder to escape, like, through the top or something, to go back to my earlier booking, would have been perfect. But no, he just, like, picks the ladder up and then hits him with the ladder. And, like, you could have hit him with anything.
Yeah.
It's a fucking cell right there. Hit him with that, So, like, and like you said, them doing a non-finish, like, two years in a row, just doesn't really make the mystique of the Hell in a Cell look good, because you're like, well, you can get out of it. There are ways out. It doesn't have to be the way it is. It's just wall to wall, not good.
It was, incredibly disappointing. But then, I think, like, what were we really expecting? Because they, to be fair, they've done a good job of building up the Fiend over the last few months. They've made him stand out, and like, the crowd are obviously invested in him as well. Like, they actively cheering him over Seth Rollins throughout most of the night, I'd say. In fact, like, Rollins has been getting more and more boos as the night was going on, so that doesn't exactly bode well for him as the big babyface champion of Raw. But yeah, it's just, I don't know, like, the whole execution of it was bad. The whole planning behind it and forcing it now was terrible. And at the same time as well, like, we're talking about sort of the Hell in a Cell gimmick itself. This is the big problem with doing these themed pay-per-views, like, every single year, is they're not, the gimmicks aren't sort of being busted out when it's natural in a feud to bust them out. They're just like a stop on the road, so they have to kind of build the feud around the gimmick rather than, like, build the feud up to earn the gimmick, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I do. And the thing about Bray Wyatt and Seth Rollins in a Hell in a Cell, I think, makes total sense. Like, that's totally what would happen. Bray Wyatt's a demon. He's going to send Seth to hell. Of course that makes sense. But it also makes sense to have that as, like you said, the kind of blow off match, or to build up to that, because it really did seem to just be like, hey, I'm Bray Wyatt and now I'm coming for Seth in Hell in a Cell. Like, there wasn't much more to it than that to begin with. It was just like,
no, if I'm not mistaken, they like announced the match first on Twitter or social media or whatever, like immediately after the last pay-per-view, or it might have even been before the last pay-per-view, when I think it was Seth against Braun Strowman.
Mm-hmm.
And so they kind of announced it that Bray Wyatt would be challenging for a Hell in a Cell, and then he started kind of, obliquely referring to it as well, and that was essentially the build. There was like no real impetus to kind of get them in to that point, really.
Exactly. Like, why would they rush? I mean, obviously he's getting over and he's popular, which is probably like a surprise to them, because otherwise this whole mess wouldn't have been so like quick. Obviously they're like, oh, there's something in this. Now we should really do something with him. Like, yeah, you should. Why don't you actually do that? Like, it doesn't make any sense. Wouldn't it have made more sense to have Seth Rollins versus somebody else, and then in a Hell in a Cell, and then have Bray Wyatt like just being a dick and constantly like chasing after Seth, and then during the match at some point, even though it's in a Hell in a Cell and nobody can get in or out, Bray Wyatt somehow manages to get in and attacks Seth. Well, attacks them both, I guess.
But then that ended up copying last year's Hell in a Cell ending with Brock Lesnar and tearing the door off and going after Roman Reigns and Braun Strowman. So you just end up repeating yourself. I almost think it wouldn't have been so bad if they'd done it the other way around. So rather than have Seth Rollins be responsible for the non-finish, why not have it be like the Fiend who's done something so awful that the referee has no choice but to throw out the match? Because that surely makes more sense, because then he's the guy who's kind of got the heat for doing something real bad and really, horrendous to Seth, that hopefully would give him some sympathy from the crowd rather than what actually happened. But yeah, so the whole premise of Seth Rollins being the one who's kind of, slowly but surely building up this pile of junk on top of the Fiend and then smashing it with a sledgehammer, it would have just made that look a whole lot better if it was the Fiend who was, responsible for the match ending.
Right, because that plays into his character.
Yeah.
That's the character they've already established. That's the kind of person he is. Why wouldn't he do that? Let me tell you this. I'm not going to tell you it. But I think one of the problems Bray Wyatt has, if I can call it a problem, is that he sells too well. I think he gives too much to his opponent, right? If you know what I mean, if that makes sense. Because Bray Wyatt's supposed to be this big, crazy monster. Even whenever he was Bray Wyatt, sans Fiend, he was supposed to be this big, mythical guy. But he was, like, always getting his ass beat, and always taking bumps and stuff. And you're like, I feel like if they're going to make him, or try to make him, like the new Undertaker, which they should be doing, to have that guy who's reliable and right there, if they want to do that stuff, they have to, kind of tread old ground, because that's what worked. And that's just, that's old school. The bigger guys, or the guys like Wyatt or whatever, are supposed to take less bumps than the smaller guys, because it makes them look big and tough and stuff. And I'm like, if Bray Wyatt really did look dead for the majority of that match, if you know what I mean, like after all the curb stomps and stuff, he didn't, and I guess the point of that is to sell the fact that, but it just doesn't make any sense.
No, exactly.
Do you know what I mean? Do you know what I mean by that? Like,
yeah. Well, the thing is, I liked that at the start of the match where he took a couple of kendo stick shots and shrugged them off. That was cool because then it looks like, oh yeah, so he is pretty tough and he is like a monster or a serial killer, kind of, just relentless coming after you. But then it just became overkill. They kind of just beat that into the ground, doing like you say, all the stomps and then the pedigree and then hitting him with the chairs and the ladder and then the toolbox, and it's just okay. Well, this is just bordering on ridiculous now, isn't it? Because if Seth Rollins does all this and still can't beat the Fiend, then like how is anyone going to beat the Fiend in future? Like,
right?
What's it going to take for him to lose a match if this is what he can absorb and kind of survive?
Right, it just makes everybody look ridiculous. I don't understand. I really don't. What? Who? What? Speechless, man. Like, it was so weird to watch.
And you know what else is weird as well? It's like, okay, so the referee decides that's enough. We got to stop the match. He can't continue anymore. And then, within like a minute, Seth Rollins is leaning over Bray Wyatt, and then all of a sudden Bray Wyatt's like alive again, and he's got the mandible claw in. So, he wasn't dead after all. So,
right?
Why did they stop the match then?
Why didn't he just do that?
Yeah.
Why didn't he just get up from the pile of crap? Like, why did he need that extra like 10 seconds when they put the stretcher out before he like totally came alive again with no hint of having been beaten down like that? Like, why didn't he just do it?
Yeah.
He just sat there while somebody piled a load of junk on his face. He just lay there and like, why? But like, if this was like a legitimate contest and he had the ability to just get up off that, why would you, like, what kind of weird mind game are you beating him into? And again, argument can be made that Bray will come out and be all like, you see, I've got into your head, I made you a monster just like me, yada yada yada. But like, it was just so heavy-handed and bullshit that it just doesn't make any sense. I don't know.
Yeah.
Fucking, you would think with all the talk of the new wrestling wars and with everybody having to grab for attention these days, and the WWE kind of losing viewership and trying to like keep a hold of whatever small percentage of the viewers they would have, you would think like now more than ever they wouldn't do one of the worst fucking things you've ever seen in professional wrestling.
Yeah.
By the way, is that hyperbole?
No, I'd say this was probably right up there with sort of WCW era, with like Vince Russo kind of doing all of his absolute garbage.
Just nonsensical fucking. I'm speechless. But like, it was weird to watch.
Yeah.
It was just like, what the fuck am I? And then, I have this argument with myself a lot where I'm like, do I even like wrestling anymore? Like, is it fun? Because here's the thing about the WWE that they do all the time, and they've done it for a long, long time, is like a lot of the stuff they put out is kind of like meh or garbage. Sometimes it does straight to garbage. Sometimes it's just like good. It's okay, But given the giant roster they have, it's not like as good as it should be or as good as you think it should be. But like every so often there'll be like something great will happen, like a little nugget of amazingness, Like there's always a silver lining under those incredibly heavy, dark-looking clouds that's about to fucking rain down on us, There's always like one thing. Like, do you remember watching wrestling whenever the Nexus happened?
Yeah.
That was awesome.
Yeah.
What the fuck else happened that year?
Oh, I couldn't tell you.
Exactly. Like, every so often, they'll do something really good, and you're like, yes, I'm in. And then you remember that, like, when was that, 2010?
Yeah, something like that.
So
either 10 or 11. Yeah.
So we're talking like around Michael Cole being a heel era.
Yeah.
Which was the polar opposite of good, you know. They always but they always find a way to like draw you back in, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so recently I've been like, oh, you know, it's fine. It is what it is. And then the Kabuki Warriors won, and I was so happy because I'm like, finally, these guys that are so good and so talented, finally getting TV time, and they're finally, you know, champions together. It was a very sweet thing for me anyway. And then the main event happened, and I was like, I don't even know if I have the energy for this anymore. Like, it just sucked everything out of me, you know. I'm like, that was just so Liam.
Yeah,
it was just.
I think as well, this is coming like hot off the heels of the SmackDown Live debut on Fox, which had like a controversial finish in and of itself with Kofi Kingston losing the title to Brock Lesnar in like 7 seconds or whatever. Like, people have been shitting all over that, like, you know, Friday night, Saturday. So you would have thought they'd maybe rethink their plans here. Like, well, okay, if they didn't like that, maybe we should do something that kind of, just like build up their faith again, like get the audience invested again. But nah, they just went for the.
They were like, fuck it, let's just do something even worse.
Yeah.
Don't you love the consistency? They're like, we fucked up the main event scene on SmackDown. May as well fuck up the main event scene on Raw. You know, like, let's fuck them both up. You know, let's see how badly we can screw things up. The thing about the Brock Lesnar Kofi Kingston thing, while unfortunate, like it was silly. I saw a good argument by Lance Storm. He tweeted in defense of the match. We talked about how we thought that with Eric Bischoff and Paul Heyman on board, Raw would take on a more kind of entertainment-y, bombastic, crazy kind of tone to it with Paul Heyman, and SmackDown would be a little bit more sports-based with Eric Bischoff, reality-based. Lance Storm argued that if you were in an MMA fight, for example, inside the octagon, and somebody like, you know, jumps at you and you like catch him with a knee, and the guy goes down, the match could end in like 7 seconds. Right? There's a difference between getting caught and getting beat. That was his argument, and I understand that, and that makes sense when you put it like that, right? You can explain away the SmackDown thing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can totally like, I don't like it, but it is what it is, and I would say that's not going to be the last time Kofi gets a championship because he had a very good first reign, you know. So like, I imagine this is more of their typical booking. Once they know eyes are going to be on the product, you know, now that they're moving SmackDown to Fox or whatever the fuck, they're going to like screw around with it for a couple of months, and then everything will right itself eventually, right? That's the way I imagine things going. So you can explain that away. You can't really explain the Hell in a Cell thing because it was stupid. But if I may just touch on that SmackDown thing a little longer, they brought that guy out. What's his name? Cain?
Velasquez, I think.
Velasquez? Okay, they brought this guy, Cain Velasquez, out, who was the guy who beat Brock Lesnar for the championship. Right?
Yes.
Way back, fucking, whenever, 2010?
I have no idea.
Boy, we're hitting 2010 pretty hard.
Yeah,
in whatever that was, UFC. So, like, that angle makes sense. And this guy's been out wrestling, so he kind of knows what he's doing now. And being up against Brock Lesnar, who definitely does know what he's doing, you know, that's going to end up being a fine match, right? Here's the thing. When that guy came out on SmackDown, right, if you were to stand that guy up beside Kofi Kingston and then point to any random schmo in the street or whatever and say, which one of those two men look like they could beat Brock Lesnar right now? I dare say everybody's going to pick Kofi.
Really?
Yeah, that guy didn't look like he was going to beat Brock Lesnar.
I mean, okay, so he's not, say, as defined as, like, your average WWE superstar. Like, he wasn't, you couldn't really see a lot of his muscles and stuff, but he looks like a tank, and, you know, he looks like he could hold himself in a fight for sure. Probably more so than Kofi, I thought, but I guess, well, as well as it's kind of a recognition thing. Like, if you don't know who he is,
right,
and not everyone else is gonna know who he is, it's like, oh, okay, Rey Mysterio just brought this random dude off the street.
Right. But it did kind of just look like a guy off the street who took his shirt off.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, Kofi looks like he would put up more of a fight. And he didn't. You know, so like, what does that say about your guys? You know what I mean? Like, you built Kofi Kingston up. He's a WWE wrestler. And now here comes this other guy from that other sport that they don't talk about. And he is supposed to be more of a threat to Brock Lesnar than Kofi Kingston, who is like a, 15-year pro?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, that didn't make any sense to me. I get the angle, but once again, I feel like maybe they didn't do it right. And again, because SmackDown's moving to Fox or whatever, like, that angle had to be kind of rushed itself. Because they're like, nah, we'll get all the eyes on us with this amazing angle, you know?
Yeah, a little bit.
I get that.
It's kind of that, and the whole Braun Strowman and Tyson Fury thing as well. It seems like they are kind of desperate at the moment for some sort of mainstream crossover, almost like trying to get fans from outside the WWE, like boxing fans or UFC fans, to come over and check them out, really. Which you can't blame them for. That's, you know, that's their audience has been disappearing for the past decade and a half, so they've got to try and get it back whatever way they can. But I can see where people's frustrations come with stuff like that, like with Velasquez coming in and essentially taking a spot because he's being positioned to, you know, challenge Brock Lesnar for the title, like right off the bat. But, you know, from a business point of view, you can totally understand why that's happened and why Kofi got beat in 7 seconds or whatever, because ultimately Kofi versus Brock Lesnar isn't going to put that many butts in seats, whereas Brock Lesnar versus Cain Velasquez is. So,
well, that remains to be seen, doesn't it?
Yeah,
like, we can say we know what the idea behind it is, but like, who knows if that's going to be like, because what you're risking is your regular fans like us who are like, who is this guy? Why is he there instead of Kofi Kingston? You risk us losing interest in the product because they're trying a little bit too hard to like stray away from wrestling. You know, it's fine to like bring these guys in if they need to, but like, you know, then they kind of paint themselves into a corner where like these guys are big names in other sports, so they don't have to do a job if they don't want to. You know, like it raises further questions, and like, you know, this has only happened like this week, whatever. So we have to wait and see just how amazing the ratings are. But like, I can't imagine it's gonna change the needle too much. You know?
Well, yeah, and I guess it depends as well on where these matches inevitably happen as well, because like I think the rumor is that it's going to be Strowman versus Tyson Fury at Crown Jewel, and I think maybe even Lesnar against Velasquez as well, because they've got this press conference coming up on Friday to announce something. So you kind of imagine, yeah, they get like a big payday for doing those matches there, but they're going to be wrestling in front of probably pretty indifferent crowd who don't really react to much of anything, so that's not going to do well in terms of presentation, as, you know, showing them off as actual big stars that we should care about. So yeah, it's a bit of a strange one.
Right. Also, you want to factor in that it's questionable just how many of the regular fans watch those Saudi Arabia specials. Because I don't.
No, nor do I.
Do. But like a lot of us are like, it's just like a filler paper. Like if you miss it, nothing's gonna change. Who cares? Because they don't care. You know that. I mean, the Saudis like watching it. They're like, whatever. They don't care. So like, whatever happens, like it's not gonna make a difference. So like, is this smart because they're trying to entice people to watch the show that nobody watches, or is it already dumb because now they put on, or are rumored to be putting on matches that they're doing their very best to hype up that maybe nobody will watch because everybody skips those shows. You know, once again, the questionable booking, and that's at the end of October, right? It's on Halloween.
Yeah, that's right.
It's on Brexit Day. Those motherfuckers. We'll probably have other stuff to worry about that day. We'll not be in the mood to stream a wrestling pay-per-view from Saudi Arabia. We got our own problems going on here. Don't you think it's quite interesting that a moment ago you were talking about like these guys coming in, kind of taking a spot from some of the other people on the roster? Isn't it just perfect timing that these two guys would come in and take a spot from somebody at the exact point to go to a pay-per-view where they are guaranteed like a big fucking payday?
Yeah.
Isn't that convenient that they bring these guys in so some other schmucks have to sit in the sidelines and don't get to get that sweet Saudi Arabia money? You know, I mean, you know, if you want money, that's a good way to do it. But again, like maybe it's because like Daniel Bryan might not be going, and other people might just be like, we don't want to go again, you know. So they might just be like trying to pad the show up beforehand, just in case people decide to not turn up or not travel like in previous years, you know. So whatever. And again, like if it's just set up as an attraction for the Saudi Arabia show, then you're like, okay, it'll be done soon. You know, this will all be over before Christmas probably. You know. I'm interested to see what they do with Brock Lesnar, because I assume now that we're in October, I feel like it's probably a pretty good guess to say that Brock Lesnar is probably going to hold that championship until WrestleMania.
Yeah.
Feels like that. So it's going to be interesting to see how they pull that one off, and like
who beats him for the title as well.
Right, like who can they put up against them at WrestleMania?
Because there's no way that they can do Roman Reigns again. Like they've been to that well like way too many times already.
Can you imagine if the main event of WrestleMania 2020 was Brock Lesnar versus Roman Reigns?
Oh my god.
Again. Because it went over so well the first couple of times they've done it. Why not really double down? I mean, they're already disappointing people with the fucking Bray Wyatt situation that we've covered extensively. Like, why not keep disappointing people? This is what I mean, though. They do this all the time. Like, sometimes you feel like they just disappoint people for the fun of it. And you're like, I don't know if I could be bothered with all of this, you know?
Yeah, like, it is another case of booking themselves into a corner. Like, exactly the same as putting the Fiend in this match with Seth Rollins way too early in his, like, you know, new career as the Fiend. Like, putting the title back on Brock Lesnar again. There's only, like, maybe one or two people who can, like, legit beat him, or who can beat him and look legit in doing so. Like, anyone else, you just think, nah, they can't beat Brock Lesnar. There's no way, you know, Brock should be losing to most of the roster. So aside from, you know, Roman Reigns or Seth Rollins, like maybe Daniel Bryan is like an outside one. Like I would say no one else on the roster right now should be beating Brock Lesnar because he's the beast and he's been built up as this mythical monster who can just maul through everyone. So yeah, it seems like putting the title back on Brock is just going to cause more problems down the line, which I don't know they've really kind of considered.
Well, obviously they're not afraid of doing things that might have more problems later down the line. But I mean, I would love to see Daniel Bryan versus Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania. Like, if that's the route they went down, I'm like, I could, because the one they did, when was it, last year?
Yeah.
Series? Really good.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I could see that again, but just so long as Daniel Bryan's involved somehow, it's gonna be good. Like, I feel they're doing some weird Roman versus Bryan thing, which might happen at WrestleMania.
You reckon?
I don't know. I feel like that's going to be the end game at some point, but I'm like, can they stretch this one till WrestleMania? I don't think so. It's going to be tricky. Like, you'll probably see that maybe at the Royal Rumble or even before that, because we've still got a couple of months to go before the end of the year. So, maybe. But, like, yeah. Oh, what about this? Let me throw you this scenario. You don't like Roman Reigns versus Brock Lesnar for the championship at WrestleMania. How about this rematch? I'm sure you'll love Brock Lesnar versus Goldberg.
Ugh.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Are you excited?
Oh my god.
Would you put it past them?
Not really, no. But, it's just Goldberg again.
Hey, he beat Dolph Ziggler pretty quick, so...
Yeah, but everyone beats Dolph Ziggler.
Yeah, I mean, we've beaten Dolph Ziggler before, so...
Yeah.
That's not a good indicator of success. Yeah, very, very interesting. They do seem to be digging themselves into a lot of holes, which is very interesting. So, what I'm going to do, kind of as a fan, is I'm really just going to... I still have my network subscription. I haven't cancelled it in rage yet, like a lot of other people say they're going to do, but I don't think they do. But like I said, like I'm just getting tired of the shenanigans and the constant, like, because sometimes it really does feel like they're just slapping you in the face. Like, whatever, what are you gonna do about it? I'm like, well, I could just pay attention to something else. So while I still have my subscription, I'm dangerously close to just not caring about it anymore. And I imagine once the Kabuki Warriors lose the Women's Tag Team Championships next week on Raw to fucking somebody, then I'll probably just quietly cancel my subscription and try to forget about the whole thing. Because at the moment, like, that's really the one thing keeping me there. I enjoy watching NXT, but I don't get a whole lot of time to kind of watch it as regularly as I want to. And just the other stuff that they're doing is questionable. I think is the best way, the most diplomatic way to put it. So, yeah.
Well, this is a good advert for why there's, like, plenty of other wrestling outside of WWE. If WWE isn't kind of ticking any of your boxes,
right.
We are at a time now in history where there is more kind of wrestling available than ever before. Like, you got the NWA have just started up their show this past week. You got AEW started up their show last week. You got Impact to kind of on a new network. You got New Japan. You got all sorts of other feds like Ring of Honor and MLW, and there's so much wrestling out there. So if you do feel like WWE has kind of burned its bridges with you, then at least there's other stuff you can kind of sample and get invested in.
Well, that's exactly the thing, man. Like, it boggles my mind that with it being so hot right now, that they would just constantly be like, fucking, fuck you. Here's Hell in a Cell, this is what you get. You know, like it just the timing of it is bizarre. I've seen a little bit of Major League Wrestling. Well, I liked it. It seemed pretty good. But I can't remember what it's on one of the channels here on Freeview. I don't know if you've seen it.
Mm-hmm.
It's on like a sport. Do you watch it?
No, I've not actually checked it out before.
It's on like Monday nights, I think. But I'm always busy like Monday nights, so I missed it a lot of the time. At least it was on Monday nights on like one of the sports channels on Freeview. So I got to see a couple of shows. And one of the shows they had like I think it was the first one they were putting on the channel, and they had a big like battle royale. I don't know how you pronounce it properly. Battle royale. I always say battle royale.
I've always said battle royal.
I always give it a little bit of class, you know, battle royale.
Yeah.
And you'll never guess who came out in the battle royale. But you want to guess?
I was gonna say Teddy Hart.
He probably did, yeah. He's not the one I remember, but he was certainly contracted for the match, or for the show at least. The Blue Meanie.
Oh, wow.
The Blue Meanie came out and did his little dance and he got into the ring, and I was like, that's how you pop the crowd. God damn. Blue Meanie, like every year I like cross my fingers that the Blue Meanie will just randomly turn up at a Royal Rumble. Like they did one in Philly, right?
Yeah.
They blew their fucking chance, and I'm like, come on, man! It's just at some point to have the Blue Meanie. That's my sliver of hope. that's what it is, guys. If you want to keep me on board, have the Blue Meanie turn up out of nowhere for no reason, 20 years after he's been relevant in the Royal Rumble, and I will be a happy man. You can give me 6 Hell in a Cell finishes like that if you want. Just give me the Blue Meanie once, and I'll be happy. I remember a couple of years ago, I think it was Survivor Series 2017. I think it was that show. It was Survivor Series anyway. And they put on like one of the worst main events I'd ever seen. Like, it was so stupid. It was a Survivor Series match, and it had like Kurt Angle and Shane McMahon and Triple H in it and stuff.
Yeah.
And, do you remember this one? Did you watch it?
It's not ringing any bells so far.
I remember watching it and just being like, this is garbage. Because the stories they were telling either didn't make any sense or were like backwards booked. Like they had Shane McMahon do the bulk of the work. And I'm like, if you've got, and there were a lot of like really big guys in that match. And I'm like, if you've got all of these guys in this match, and you make half of them eliminated, so that Shane McMahon can do the bulk of the work in this match. Like, if Shane McMahon's out there taking pedigrees and shit, and you guys are out in the first minute, like, it makes you fucking people look like idiots, you know. And then there's a bit where like Kurt Angle and Triple H were on the same team. I think it was Kurt Angle, and the Triple H. Like pedigree.
That rings a bell.
I think they were setting up for the Ronda Rousey thing, which kind of made sense, but like it took them so long. Like, they didn't talk about it the day after. You know, like it was one of those things that, remember that thing that happened 3 months ago? Well, that's part of this storyline. I'm like, well, if you don't have a thread that connects that point to now, then it's stupid and doesn't make any sense. So, like, there was loads of this garbage going on in this main event. And it was also when it went on too long. So I was like, this is absolutely one of the worst things I've ever seen. Fortunately, just about 2 years later, not even 2 full years later, they managed to top themselves with, in regards to one of the worst main events I've ever seen. And again, I don't really think that that's hyperbole. Like, it was just not good. We're going back to the Hell in a Cell thing.
There's a big reason why there's been such an outpouring of disdain and frustration and just general kind of anti-WWE feeling over the last few days. It's probably the big reason why they didn't really talk about it much on Raw as well. They kind of just skipped over it. Which
is dumb, because they have to talk about it. Because we want to know what the fuck was going on.
Yeah.
You know? Like, I had heard that, like, apparently people were pissed off at the match, especially at the time in the arena, because they wanted Bray to win.
Mm-hmm.
But I was pissed off just at how shitty the match was.
Yeah.
I was just blown away by it. I'm like, dude, like, how have you been in the wrestling business for so many years, and that
get it so wrong,
right, right? And again, you could be like that we're just a bunch of marks on the internet, and we don't know what we're talking about. But like, I think in this case, we totally do.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't like some inside knowledge, deep-seated wrestling business knowledge that you have to be in the business to understand. That was just not good to watch.
Yeah, and it's not just our opinion, it's everyone's opinion.
This isn't just us, like, hopping on a bandwagon or anything. This is, like, a lot of people were, like, really pissed off by that. And
like, did you see the clip of Sean Waltman on Watch Along, like, questioning, like, what the hell did we just see?
Right, and he, and he's in the business, he knows it all.
Yeah.
And he agrees that it was not so good. So, didn't really think that I'd be agreeing with X-Pac a whole lot, but here you go. That's just the way it is. Guy's not so silly after all, oh, dude. I don't... I mean, that's just the best way to sum it all up, isn't it? Just like a disappointed sigh.
Yeah.
You're just like... Because, like, that's kind of what I was saying earlier, is that it was really stupid and really bad, and it wasn't fun. But like I said before, should we really be surprised? I was surprised it was as bad as it was.
Mm.
But like, they do this stuff all the time. So,
Yeah, but it is, like you say, it's like getting to the point where, as fans, like, how much more are we supposed to take? Like, you can totally understand why people are so anti-WWE and sort of pro-AEW now, just because they're so desperate for something that isn't WWE and doing this bullshit week after week that, of course people are going to go hunting for the first thing that looks different and, could potentially actually be enjoyable to watch. So, yeah.
But here's the thing, though, about AEW. Like, they're giving off that kind of air of being a little bit more hardcore, a little bit riskier.
Mm.
Like, potentially, could you have seen them booking a match like that? The way it ended. With the over-exaggerated, like, beat you over the head with it. Look, he's really getting his ass beat here. Look how far we're going. Like, is that out of the question?
Well, no, I think they could have potentially gone that route. I think maybe it was the idea in theory was to show how much of an unrelenting monster that Bray Wyatt is and how he can absorb pain and all this kind of stuff. And that's kind of the kind of thing you can see happening in wrestling to kind of build up a character in that specific way. So I could totally see AEW or anyone else going that route, but maybe having a bit more sort of caution about it, not going so far over the top, and hopefully having a better idea for how to kind of conclude it all as well.
Yeah, by not making it all shit.
Yes, yeah.
I mean, if they did that, then they'd be okay. They don't make it totally shit. And like, I'll be honest with you, it's been kind of rare that I look at the stuff that the WWE do and go, that's total shit. Like, I'm usually pretty lenient towards those guys.
Yeah.
But, some stuff's just undefendable. But that's the way it is. It's gonna keep on rolling, I would imagine.
Yeah.
But that's it. Is there anything else you want to say about that match or the state of wrestling at the moment before we wrap things up?
No, I kind of want to forget that match ever existed, to be honest. So let's just burn that memory from my mind forever.
Boy, I don't know if we're ever going to be able to forget that. I mean, if it was tough to watch, it's going to be tough to forget.
Yeah.
But all right, guys, we'll wrap things up here. Thank you very much for listening. We will be back a couple of weeks probably, and we'll do another podcast, and it'll be amazing. And hopefully, we won't have sat through anything as painful as the main event to Hell in a Cell 2019. Although, Crown Jewel's coming up, so
yeah, I was just gonna say,
but we're not gonna watch that, so it's probably not gonna be too big of a deal. So we will see all of you guys in the next episode. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.